I'm Joel Crampton. I help financial advisors, RIAs, and wealth managers replace scattered marketing with strategic systems that boost AUM and production volume.
I'm Mandy MacPhee. I am a fractional chief marketing officer and work with founders who are doing too much and need someone to turn their scattered marketing into a system that actually drives results.
Hi, Mandy.
How's it going?
Hey, good. Hey, episode number 2. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Episode number 2.
All right. So we are right in the middle of back to school season. I think for everybody, parents and kids alike, people are all starting to think about end of the year. Starting to think about 2026 planning. It's crazy how quickly the summer flew by. My kids are in high school now, so it was a bit of a sad parent moment when I saw them drive away for the first time, because this was the first time I didn't drop them off at school since they were tiny little babies at daycare.
Are they back at school already? Has school started in the States?
Yeah, most of them have started before Labor Day. It used to be everything started after Labor Day.
Yeah, school in Canada doesn't start until, well, it depends on the province, but really doesn't start until right after Labor Day. But it's such a time of change, isn't it? I was reflecting on this because it's a very different year for my kids and me, where this is the first year where they're actually not going back to school. My daughter is, but that's her master's. That's a bit different. She's going across to the UK. She's doing her master's in Oxford, so a very proud moment for me.
Yeah, wow. What is your focus area?
Clinical embryology. A lot of terminology that I don't understand. It's very different than marketing. My son has entered the workforce for the first time. So the change that's happening for us this September isn't necessarily a typical back to school year. It's one that's marked with significant change for all of us.
I feel like summers used to be the time off from work, and certainly in my world with financial advisors, there are a lot that do take off and go on vacations, but there's a lot that are hunkering down and trying to improve their businesses, especially knowing that year-end tax planning is going to be coming up very quickly, and so they're using this lull as a period to improve their businesses and talk to people like you and me to help improve their business in a strategic way. So I think we've seen, just with all our other colleagues in the fractional CMO world, business didn't slow down over summer, and it's just going to get ramped up here in the next month or so, and then we're going to start talking about 2026 plans, looking at 2025, how did those perform, where do we need to improve in our areas of marketing to reach the goals that we maybe didn't reach in 2025, and try to understand why we didn't hit those goals, what can we do better in 2026.
The change that's happening right now as you look into September is there's a very short runway to the end of the year. So are you going to be making your 2025 goals? And if you're not, what help do you need to get to those 2025 goals? What are your goals for 2026? How are you going to meet those goals? What's your assessment of 2025, and how are you going to use that assessment to drive your 2026 plans? It's an interesting time of the year, one of my favorite times of the year, for so many reasons.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if we can get into the topic of the episode, was how to stand out in the sea of sameness. And I think a lot of firms have realized that everything is becoming commoditized. We're all starting to use the same AI tools to create content, and those large language models, those LLMs, are all using the same verbiage and content and key talking points. And so they're starting to become a sea of sameness. And so I think businesses are starting to realize, all right, what do we need to do? If we're all using the same tools, how do we continue to stand out and rise above this sea of sameness?
Everybody's saying the same thing. I'm client focused, I'm innovative, I'm digital first, I'm number one. You need to come to me. It's interesting how in financial services, how everybody's saying the same thing, just in a nuanced, different way. How do you find the white space in your market? And that's what we're going to talk about today.
And actually, I don't think it's that difficult, at least from my standpoint, to stand out. There's so much mediocrity in financial services. I feel like a lot of the companies that I've worked at on the corporate side, have been so far behind the game when it comes to marketing. To stand out, you just have to do a few things better than the rest of your competition. And I think having a strategic partner like the fractional CMO to help guide you down that path can help you stand out. It doesn't take a lot of investment. It just takes a better strategy. And I think with a few minor changes, we can really change the way we stand out in the sea of competition.
It really comes down to doing your research and taking a few steps that we're going to talk about in this episode on what steps you can take today to find your white space and get out of that sea of sameness. So let's jump in. Overall, we're seeing nuances between Canada and the US in the sea of sameness, and everyone is slamming the same messages down consumers' throats. If we start in the fintech space first, what we're seeing when it comes to the US, we're seeing a lot of people shouting financial freedom, no hidden fees, banking reimagined. You think Chime, Current, Varo, their taglines are interchangeable. There's heavy ad spend, influencer marketing, and mission-driven language that all feels exactly the same. Then when you look at Canada, there are fewer players, but they're still saying very similar things. You've got your Wealth Simples, Coho, Neo Financials, EQ Banks. They're all saying simple, fee-free, digital first, and giving those types of promises in the marketplace. But because the market is smaller, the overlap is even tighter. So most look and sound like a copy and paste of each other. There's a lot of difference between US and Canada, where US fintechs drown in the noise due to sheer volume. Canadian fintechs lack distinctiveness because of the limited pool in the market.
Why do you think everyone's doing the same thing? Why isn't there more innovation? Why isn't there a better messaging?
I think that the reason why is they're not doing their research. They're not doing their analysis. They're not trying to find that niche. Everybody's trying to compete for the same consumers. And because they're competing for those same consumers, they're saying the same things.
Yeah, I think you also get into the same mindset of the financial advisors and firms that I work with, where you've got leaders of these companies who are not marketing professionals, and yet they're trying to create marketing machines without a strategic guide to help them stand out. And so they're basically just seeing what everybody else is doing and copying and pasting that and thinking that's going to work because it's worked for somebody else. And if everyone's doing the same thing, then no one's doing anything.
And everybody's focused on features versus what's the consumer benefits. I talked a lot about features when I said free banking, fee-free, lower fees. It's all about the features that they're promoting and not really getting down to the nugget of what the consumer pain point is and how they're solving that consumer pain point.
I think that's the key point, is just have to understand who your customer is. What are their pain points? How does your product or service solve those pain points? Put the customer first and stop trying to sell your business. People do business with people. They want that unique touch point with a human, and I think we have gotten so far from that in business, and we're trying to take the people out of the equation. There's certain efficiencies we can put in for automation and all the AI tools, but people still want to continue doing business with people.
Exactly. What are you seeing in the wealth management space when it comes to that sea of sameness?
Same thing. It's a sea of sameness. There are over 300,000 financial advisors in the United States. There are thousands of RIA firms. Everyone is pretty much going after the same type of clients: retirees, pre-retirees, high net worth individuals and families. In Kansas City, where I'm based, there are probably 100 advisors at least going after those same key client profiles. And in a sense, there is enough business to go around, especially if you're talking smaller RIA shops who only have one or two advisors. They can only manage so many people. Common rule of thumb is advisor can manage about 75, 85 households at one time. So if you think in big metro areas, it's fantastic to have that big population. But if people just search for a financial advisor, you're going to get hit with a bunch of people. And I don't think there's a lot of differentiation between one person on a corner versus another person. So websites look very, very similar. A lot of marketing service providers out there offer templated websites, stock photos, reusing a lot of the same social media content. So again, they don't have anybody within their firms that is guiding the marketing strategy. They're just doing it themselves, and so they're just trying to find the easiest path forward, and easy is not always best.
And a lot of the financial advisors and the firms that you work with, Joel, are very regionalized or localized to their areas. Does it matter to them whether they are in a sea of sameness because they're so local, or should they be looking for that white space?
I think a lot of them are just growing by referrals, word of mouth, and that only gets you so far. I met with an advisor recently, and he used a marketing phrase, which is fantastic to hear from him directly, but it was, what got me here isn't going to get me there. He got to a certain point with his firm through the growth of referrals and word of mouth, but he knows that the pipeline of those are going to dry up, and so he understands that he needs to implement some additional marketing strategies to continue the growth momentum that his firm has seen over the past few years. I think there's, in that viewpoint, it feels like there's enough business to go around because they've had consistent pipeline of growth through these referrals. But forward-thinking advisors know that they need to do something different because, again, what got them here isn't going to get them there. I think it's the same issues that banks and credit unions have with standing out. I live in a small little suburb of Kansas City, and in our town, a population of less than 10,000, there are probably 10 banks. It's like, I feel like that's a little bit overkill, and that's the running joke in the community is, oh, what we need is more banks and more gas stations. And over by the airport, there's 15 hotels, and the parking lots are always empty. And so I'm trying to figure out, what's the business logic behind that.
I have to come visit Kansas City, Missouri.
Thank you for remembering. Yes.
Yeah.
The Kansas side has its benefits too.
Yeah.
But it's better to live in Missouri, in my opinion.
I have to come visit you one day.
Right.
Okay, so we know that white space matters. It matters to differentiate yourself, to make you authentic, to ensure that your brand stands out amongst your competitors.
Tell me more about white space. What does that mean?
The white space is the place where you are owning that your competitors do not own. It is what no one else is talking about with consumers. So when we talk about the Sea of Sameness, we're talking about the fact that you're saying the same things that your competitors are saying. You're doing the same things that your competitors are doing. The white space is where there is no noise today. There is no one talking in the same way. So if you want to stand out in the markets that you're serving, how do you find that white space where there's no noise?
And that's what every consumer is faced with, is there's noise everywhere. So how do you find those pockets of white space to stand out as an individual company? Where do you see a lot of those pockets of white space being able to be filled?
That's exactly what we're going to talk about today, and what's missing from competitor brands, and how can they stand out and find that white space and stand out from that sea of sameness. When it comes to discovering the white space, we're going to look at 4 different lenses of how you can stand apart from your competitors.
All right, I'd love to hear this. Let's start it. Tell me those 4 lenses, Mandy.
Well, I'll tell you the first one, and then Joel, hopefully you'll jump into the second one. So really it's around voice of the customer. What's missing in their current options? When we were talking a little bit earlier around what we're seeing between Canada and the US, I did mention that features is something that's prevalent across that sea of sameness within financial services. A lot of the banks are positioning themselves feature first and feature forward. But consumers aren't looking for features from you. They're looking for the right features from you, the features that matter to them. So how do you show the gaps in what their pain points are, and how do you close those gaps and close them with the features that you have? So rather than presenting the feature, how do you look for the gap that the consumer is looking for and close that gap? That can be done in several ways. You can take a look at your complaints, your drop-off moments, the workarounds that people are creating outside your product, and find out where they are tripping up in your offering, in your journey, in what you're doing, and look for those frustrations and how do you close the gaps in those frustrations with clients.
I think Voice of the customer is something that I always encourage my clients to undertake. Anytime we can get surveys or testimonials, but doing an annual survey is a fantastic way to hear from your customer, get that voice of the customer on a consistent basis so you can identify those trends and pain points that customers are having with maybe not just your service, just life in general as they navigate your particular area of the marketplace. So I always encourage customer surveys. You are able to get that net promoter score that helps you gauge how you are providing services versus competitor as an industry as a whole.
Yeah, even better than those annual surveys on the voice of the customer and NPS surveys, it's how do you get regular feedback from your customers on an ongoing basis? How do you leverage the feedback that you're already getting? Tapping into your customer service teams, tapping into the UX designers and what they're designing and who they're talking to, doing transactional surveys on your website to understand what's happening on a daily basis. So critical to evolve and change and move and ensure that your customer journey is really delivering what consumers are looking for and not just delivering the next best feature.
Yeah, I think your frontline personnel are great stewards of those voice of the customers because they are hearing every day conversations that clients are having and listening to their pain points. And that's something that I always bring up anytime I'm working with a new firm is everyone is a marketer. No matter what your title says on your business card, you are a marketer of the brand, you're a steward of the brand, especially the people that are front facing. They get a lot of insights that we in marketing maybe can't get from a survey because people don't want to share them in that kind of format. I certainly rely a lot on client service associates and even salespeople because they are listening to customers and clients and figuring out what are their pain points. And I always encourage those types of people to share what they are hearing with me because those are things that I can use in my marketing and messaging because I know if customers are facing those issues and they're speaking in certain terms and phrases, then I can pick those out and put them in my messaging. So the next person that we want to do business with, we can use those exact phrases, wording, and we know that that's going to resonate because people just like them are experiencing the same thing.
One of the best things that companies can do is sit in on those sales calls, on those customer service calls, and just listen in. Whether you can do it by sitting side by side with someone or tapping into a conversation, or if you have the right tools and technology, listening to those recordings on a regular basis, there's so much insight that you can get from those conversations and just listening in to what customers have to say.
And we also need to be cognizant to not over survey. There's survey fatigue that comes in to play. So we want to make sure that we're strategic about when and how often and in what spaces do we ask for surveys because you're going to start to see your survey participation rates drop.
Yeah, for sure. So I would ask founders and financial advisors and those CEOs, what's the one thing your customers wish was easier that no other competitor is fixing?
Ooh, that's a good transition into the next lens. How you can stand out in the Sea of Sameness is to understand what the sea looks like. What are your competitors doing? And what are they not doing? And that's part of, I think, both of our process, Mandy, is when we work with a new firm, we do a competitive analysis. We see what competitors are doing from a marketing standpoint and a service level standpoint. And we can see where there are gaps and where there's opportunities for us to capitalize and maybe find that white space that people aren't tapping into. So that category audit, that competitive audit, I think is a great part of our process when we work with a client.
There's something to be said about a good SWOT analysis. Yeah.
A good SWOT.
A good SWOT. The SWOT sometimes undervalued. Taking a moment to understand what's happening with your top 5 competitors is so critical to your success and understanding where your opportunities lie as well as where your threats lie.
And one of the competitive analysis that I did, I looked at the different competitors in the area and each of them were targeting the same types of customers, but they had a little bit of different messaging. And so what I think was eye-opening to the founder of the firm that I was working with is they didn't realize how they were positioning themselves versus their competitors because they're just not doing that on a regular basis. They're not paying too much attention to what their competitors are doing. And so it took somebody from a strategic standpoint to figure out what are our competitors doing, how are they positioning themselves in the market, and finding those key phrases and terms that other firms are using and figuring out if those apply to us as well. And if not, then we know at least what other people are doing, so we don't jump into that sea of sameness and start overusing the same terms and phrases that everybody else is using.
It's so critical, like I said. So if everyone is zigging, what's your zag that the firm can own? So when you think about taking a look at competitor analysis, it's also taking a look at cross-industry insight and borrowing ideas from outside of financial services. Don't just look at the financial services industry category. What are some of the things that you're seeing from other industries like e-commerce, like retail, that you can borrow and leverage and make it different from a financial services perspective? I'll tell you a story. I just ordered a new facial cream off Instagram.
The mask, the red light mask on, and you look like
Oh gosh, no. No, I'm not that technical. Literally just a new night cream. Beef tallow is a big thing in the retail space to make you look younger. Anyway, beyond what it is, what I loved about this new company is that when they delivered the package, the solid package, they delivered it with a personalized note. And when I say a personalized note, it wasn't a printed note. It was a handwritten thank you from the founder of the company saying, thank you so much for buying my product. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. Now, not every company can do that. They can't have that co-founder or founder reach out. But why not leverage the idea of that personalization, that personalized note when somebody buys your product? Send them that personal touch. I'd love to see a B2B fintech start sending out those personalized notes when somebody buys their payment platform or their loyalty platform or something like that.
I think a personal touch goes so far in today's digital era. There are so many tools that automate thank yous and even what looks like handwritten cards. People can tell they're not handwritten. If you can only do one thing, I think just sending that simple thank you note, handwritten, goes a long way. And I know a lot of salespeople still implement that tactic because they know that there's power in that. That helps build a connection, human to human. It builds trust that you're not just a number in the system of thousands of people doing business, and that you actually mean something to this company. Even
when you look at Wealthsimple in Canada, they didn't look at other banks' platforms when they built their online brokerage, their robo-advisory, even their banking platform. They didn't look at TD Bank or RBC or another bank. They looked at Spotify and they looked at Uber. They looked at the experiences within those two channels to build their ecosystem.
I'm a big proponent of not reinventing the wheel. I've often worked with smaller companies that don't have the multi-million or billion-dollar marketing budgets. Most of mine were in low six-figure or five-figure dollars, and so we just had to be a little more scrappy. And to do that, we just looked and saw what was working not only in financial services but other industries as well. And I often gave the homework assignment to people in the company and said, hey, if you see something that's really working in any area of your business or life, let us know on the marketing team and we'll do some vetting and see if that's something that we can add to our portfolio of marketing strategies. Oftentimes we're just a small staff of marketing people and our brain power can only go so far, but if you have the collective brain power of the entire company looking for new innovative ways to get our message out there, I think that just exponentially expands what a small marketing department can do.
Totally. Okay, number 4, brand truth and aligning to your own brand truth. Let's talk about that one, Joel.
What only your firm can credibly own. What does that mean?
It's around making sure that your firm can own what you're saying in market, that you're not saying something that you can't own. So finding the white space isn't just about finding a message that nobody else is saying. It's living up to that message as well.
I think when companies find their truth, find what makes them unique, that only their firm can credibly own, that usually comes down to the story of their company, how it was founded, who are the people that founded the company, what are their stories. That authenticity and those personal stories really resonate with potential clients. You see that in LinkedIn profiles, for example. The followers from a CEO or founder of a company are 10 times the followers of the actual company, because people would much rather follow the story of an individual versus follow the story of a company. So leading with your company's story, being true to who you are as a brand, I think that's going to help you stand out in the sea of sameness.
I go back to Well Simple. They're my go-tos, a lot of the time, because they've been so successful from a brand perspective.
Do you have a sponsorship with them?
No, I don't. Well Simple, I am all for sponsorship here.
We're gonna get some logos on our shirts next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But they've done such a good job in building their brand in Canada in such a short time, and part of their brand story has been the founder's story and what he's done to build Well Simple up from the ground. I think that's really critical, is how do you match your founder's story and vision to your brand?
That's unique to that person. No one else can tell that exact same story, and that's how you stand out.
And I'll talk a little bit about, what I'm doing for a not-for-profit company. I know it's not financial services, but it is still very relatable. This not-for-profit, the founder had some very deep lived experiences. And based on those lived experiences that she's had, she's delivering a charitable service to youths in Toronto. And the message and the brand difference that we have in market today to drive donations is based on her lived experience. And it's resonating with donors in the Toronto area and resonating with communities. And we're getting more donors as a result.
Well, Mandy, give them a shout out. Where can people find them?
The shout out for the Toronto local charity. Their mission is to help underserved youth and to help them with mental services for those that might have gone through some trauma of some sort, help them with life skills and computer services if they don't have and can't afford a computer to get through school. We know how important laptops are these days in school. They deliver those laptops to students that need it.
What's the name of the charity?
The Toronto local charity.
Good. I think we're going to have a ton of people going to their site now. I just got an email earlier this week that we were one of the top 30 marketing podcasts in Canada.
Out of here. Really?
There might only be 30 marketing podcasts in Canada, but we are in the top 30.
We're in the top 30. All right. Yay for us, Joel. That's amazing.
All right, so wrapping up our four lenses, we talked about the customer voice in a category or competitive audit, looking at cross-industry inspiration for other marketing ideas, and finding your brand's truth. What do you think?
We're seeing the same trap over and over, that firms that finally spot a piece of white space, but then they chase it as if it's another campaign trend. And if it doesn't align with who they are really are, just like TLC, customers can see through that in seconds.
Is that a TLC song you were singing?
TLC song, yeah, TLC. Sorry, the Toronto local charity is also known as TLC. It was. See, you're dating yourself now, Joel.
I Don't Want No Scrubs or the Waterfall song?
I'm not good with song names, and don't ask me to sing. But
microphones.
Do you want to sing? Do you want to sing it?
Let's turn this into a karaoke jam session. Let's do it. We're changing our entire format of this podcast. It's not marketing anymore. It's karaoke with Mandy and Joel.
Yeah. We can change the lyrics to hit on financial services.
We might need ChatGPT to help us with that. I'm not sure I'm that creative. I'm absolutely sure it could, though.
So we've talked about the Sea of Sameness, how to find that white space, how to filter it through your founder lens, and why the story really matters to you. Let's land the plane, Joel. Let's talk about the 3 moves that firms can start tomorrow.
I think it's starting with a strategic framework, and part of that is running a competitive analysis. It goes back to the SWOT part of it. What's the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Let's look at what competitors are doing. Let's look at their websites, their taglines, what they're doing from an advertising standpoint. What are they putting out for press releases? Just put them all on a grid so that we can compare our positioning to how our competitors are positioning themselves. And I think we'll quickly see where we are jumping into that same sea of sameness, and where people are over investing in some of the same tired claims, the same messaging. We need to take that map and figure out where there's white spaces and how we can differentiate ourselves.
It's amazing what you can see immediately when you lay it out visually on a board and you lay out what everybody else is doing. It's amazing how you can see same colors, same messages, same tone across your competitor space. So mapping that out and doing that competitive landscape and looking at it visually is step one. I think the second step is talk to your customers. Do 5 interviews in the next 2 weeks and find out from your customers what their pain points are. What are their pain points with your platform? What are their pain points with other people's platforms? Make it simple. Make it open-ended. Just have the conversation with real customers and ask them what frustrates them, what's missing, what they wished existed but doesn't today exist. And do some listening. And that matters because what you're going to hear from your customers is the language that they're using, what they want to hear from you. And by listening intently, you're going to shape your story based on what they're saying back to you.
Completely agree. Anytime you can get that voice of customer in your marketing strategy, finding those keywords and phrases, those pain points that are coming directly from the mouth of your key clients, you can just take that messaging and put it throughout all your other marketing efforts. Another area you can do interviews is internal interviews with all the different departments. So that helps keep marketing less of a silo, opens up the conversation and dialogue with other departments, especially the ones that are client facing, and just making sure that they understand that you want to hear their opinions, you do want to hear their ideas, and just reiterate that they are a part of the marketing messaging out to clients and prospects and customers. They don't understand, they don't see themselves as that, especially customer service folks. People see that to some degree, but even the IT teams, they have a lot of great ideas on how they can improve the customer experience. So again, keeping that dialogue open and having regular conversations and interviews of people across the departments within your firms.
It's amazing what you can hear from the operations team, from your finance team, your compliance team. They have such great insights that you can tap into and a very different perspective on what's turning the needle in the organization and what needs to change. And that all should be baked into your vision, your strategy, your brand, your messaging. It all brings that differentiation to the forefront. It's about flipping the narrative. So is there one area where you can flip the narrative in your messaging? I think that what we're seeing is that the phrasing across the industry, as we talk about the Sea of Sameness, phrasing is very similar. Can you flip the narrative in some way? And I'll go back to, simple, sponsor me. Mm-hmm. And how they flip the narrative, and they flipped it from invest in it is expensive to investing should be free. They're the first ones that brought in free trades into Canada, and everybody's been following suit ever since. So how do you flip that?
I think being the first to market with messaging is fantastic, and then other people are going to see that messaging is resonating, and they're going to start saying the same thing that you've been saying. So you need to constantly be reinventing your marketing messaging and trying to find that next new thing that can help you stand out, because the competition is probably watching what you're doing, especially if they're the category leader.
But if you can find that white space and find that message that really resonates, they're going to remember you for your message and your story. They're not going to remember you for a slogan or anything else. They're going to remember you for the story that you're telling.
All right, so bring us home, Mandy. Give key takeaways from today's episode on the Sea of Sameness.
So we talked about mapping the sameness, listening to your customers, flipping the convention and flipping the messaging. These aren't multi-year strategies. They're things that you can start doing immediately. And if you do, you'll be so much closer to that white space that your competitors won't be able to touch. So if there's one takeaway that I have, it's that, blending in is the fastest way to lose in financial services. When your firm sounds like everyone else, digital first, trusted partner, helping you achieve your goals, you don't give customers a reason to choose you. And in that sea of sameness, the default choice is always going to be the biggest or the cheapest option available.
And I don't think it takes much to stand out. It just takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of intentionality in your marketing, having a strategic guide and partner within the firm to initiate some of those efforts to stand out, to do the customer surveys, to do the strategic analysis, the competitive analysis, audit your category, borrow ideas from outside industries, having someone that owns that entire process. It doesn't take much to find a professional to manage those things. There's lots of people that can certainly help you do that. Raising my hand over here, but I think it's something that companies absolutely have to do and be intentional with, because if you're not doing it, you're not going to thrive, you're not going to survive, you're not going to be able to stand out, you're going to go under.
I think the challenge is, how can you start tomorrow? How can, as a founder, how can you run that message map, talk to 5 customers, and really identify the one category convention you can flip?
And they can start by just realizing that they're not the person to do that, and find somebody that can take that over for them, who's a professional in that area. So I think they can identify the need, but then they need to find the person that's actually going to do it, that has some expertise in that area. And typically it's not the founder of the company.
I've talked to a ton of founders, and one of their biggest challenges is time. They don't have enough time to do everything. They're running product, they're running compliance, they're running the technology, they're running the operations, they're trying to do sales, they're trying to do marketing. Well, something's got to give at some point to get to, and you said it, what got you here doesn't necessarily get you there, right? Founders have been so successful in getting to a certain point. At some point is the time to bring in the right people to get you to where your next growth stage is and your next growth level.
And I think if you're a fintech founder, credit union executive, financial advisor, you know what your marketing looks like. You just don't know how it appears against the competition. And we're certainly here for you if you want to reach out. We'll help you find your white space and turn that into measurable growth.
We've been talking about the sea of sameness in financial services, but honestly, it exists in our world too. Fractional CMOs or fractional chief marketing officers, they're popping up everywhere, and a lot of them sound the same. But what makes Joel and I different is that we don't just give you more marketing activity. We bring decades of financial services expertise, and we help build systems that align marketing to growth. That's strategy. That's not noise.
We've seen it firsthand. We've walked the walk. We don't just talk the talk. We have been entrenched in corporate entities before. We've seen the struggles. We know what works, what doesn't work. And we're able to help companies from a fractional standpoint. If companies are tired of spending money on campaigns that just blend in, that's certainly where we can help and help you stand out. We've walked in your shoes. We know what it takes to cut through all the noise, and that's why we're here, to help you grow smarter, faster, and without borders.
If marketing looks just like your competitors, reach out. We'll help you find that white space, and we'll help you turn that into measurable growth.
Love it. All right, great episode, Mandy. We'll see you next time.
Until next time.